what's up, everybody? Welcome back to Voices from the Mausoleum, and welcome to another episode of Video Game Adaptations with my co-host, Cavalor.
Hello.
We're back talking an old one. Well, the part of it's old. The other part's not so old. We are talking Castlevania.
I think this is the oldest game that we've covered on the show.
When did this come out?
The first Castlevania game came out in 1986.
Why did I even ask? We didn't even know that information.
Well, this is like cats. I found this horrifying fact out. Now everyone needs to suffer our.
She's like, you're in the same age group. You can suffer too. Okay. Jesus, I had no idea. Oh, I don't know why I asked. I did it to myself. Well, so the Netflix show Castlevania is the story, sort of the third one, Dracula's Curse.
Yes.
Yeah. So, yes, that's what we're talking about. So, what do you got for our synopsises?
Oh no.
Is that all it says?
It went. Oh, okay. Hold on. I clicked ad. It went away. I was like, wait a minute. No, I've had this I just checked. But
I was ready.
Ad and it was loading. And I was like, but I thought it just went blank. I thought I got like screen.
Oh no, yeah.
Error. Okay, so here we are. For real. And I did pull up the third one specifically. If you want, I also have the first Castlevania game saved. It is not helpful in any way, but I did think it was very funny.
No, you should start with that one then. If it's funny, I want to hear it.
Okay, it was players control Simon Belmont, descendant of legendary vampire hunter who enters the castle of Count Dracula to destroy him when he suddenly reappears 100 years after Simon's ancestor vanquished him, which tells you absolutely nothing about the plot of the. Although, to be fair, the first Castlevania game didn't have that much plot.
That wasn't a big plot, right? Yeah.
Which I guess is why that's the synopsis. But I did kind of do a double take where it's like.
Yeah.
Okay, but the first one, I will read the first paragraph of this. It is long. It just keeps going. It's like we'll start with the first paragraph for the synopsis of Castlevania 3, which is the one that is relevant here.
Yeah.
The year is 1476, and Count Dracula has started to ravage Europe with an army of monsters. The Belmont family of vampire hunters, once exiled from Wallachia, are called into action. They feared the Belmonts' superhuman power, but with Dracula menacing to swallow Europe in darkness, they are left with no choice but to call Trevor Belmont, current wielder of the vampire killer whip. So... and then it just keeps going. It just keeps going on and on and on.
That's weird because I feel like that's probably that's a good stopping point, right?
I feel like that's enough. I feel like that's just enough context for that. But
yeah. Okay. What does it have for our series?
For our series, it's pretty much that, but a little bit more open-ended. It covers a little bit more. When his human wife is burned alive at the stake after being falsely accused of witchcraft, the vampire Vlad Dracul Tepes declares all the people of Wallachia will pay with their lives. He summons an army of demons that overruns the country, causing people to live lives of fear and distrust. To combat this, the outcast monster hunter Trevor Belmont takes up arms against Dracula's forces, aided by the magician Sypha Belnatus and Dracula's damn fair son, Alucard. Which, I think I think that's the most accurate while also being concise out of. I will say, the Dracula's Curse one is super accurate. It's just so fucking long.
I wonder why. Like,
it tells you
why some of these things, I don't know who writes these, but yeah.
I was kind of worried because after finding the first Castlevania one, I was like, so the Castlevania 3 one is going to be really short and tell us nothing. And then it was like, no, we're going to tell you everything that happens point by point in this game. It's like, all right, that's enough.
Yeah. I don't know where to start with this one. I loved the series. I was like mildly obsessed with it. I watched the first 3 seasons without taking a breath. And so, or the first 2 seasons, I had to wait for 3 and wait for 4. That's it, right? 4 seasons. And I absolutely loved it. I was not as into the Castlevania games as a lot of people that I, like my family, like I had like my brother and my brother-in-law and like my parents, they're all gamers. And but I do think that it was better as far as having a story. I don't remember 2. I may not have played 2. I don't remember anything as far as like the story, or I don't remember it that much. I don't think I
That
remember
might
anything.
be fair. There are a lot of Castlevania
There's
games.
a bunch. And there's also these are also comics, yes?
Yes.
Yes. So there's tons of if you're into the story, there's tons of things to look at. Um but yeah, so story-wise, this is another example of one that has like it takes some liberties. So there's some folks missing. So like the one of his other, main counterparts from Dracula's Curse is like not even mentioned in the show at all. And then there's another Belmont that's missing, right? Oh, what's his name? There's another Belmont that makes appearances in Dracula's Curse that's not in the show. Not just Trevor. There's somebody else. But other than that, it is a similar setup. I think if they had only done the first and maybe second season, it would have been fun. I'm trying to remember. See, I watched these really close together. So we were just talking about this in the previous episode about how like hard it gets when you watch them all together. I don't remember when the main plot line of when Dracula goes away. Is that 2 or 3?
2.
2.
That's 2.
Okay, so if they did 1 and 2, it would have been probably what I would consider more true to the main story for Dracula's Curse. But then it goes on for 2 more seasons and has a bunch of other shit going on that doesn't happen in the game.
Yeah.
What do you think of the gameplay for were you a big Castlevania fan? Like, did you play a lot of the games?
So I say this a lot where I have to play games chronologically. Um, I do also say that there are rare exceptions, and I think that Castlevania is one of the rare exceptions to this, because even games that you arguably should not play from the beginning, cough cough Diablo, cough cough, I did. Um, I'm that weird nerd that played the original Diablo game. Do I regret it? Yes. Do I wish I had listened when people told me to start with 2? Yes. but but there's something in my brain that's broken where like if I know that there's a first one, I have to play it. Castlevania is great at tricking people in that regard because you can
Mm,
pick up virtually, I don't even remember which one I played first. You can pick up virtually any Castlevania game and it looks like it could be a standalone game. It'll like trick you, which is how I got started in the series. So I actually
yeah.
played a lot of the I played some of the ones that they had released for the 3DS. I think was
Oh.
where I came into Castlevania, and then I backtracked.
Mhm.
Um, just because I didn't have a console as a kid, so it was like not a
Yeah.
huge. I was a PC gamer, and Castlevania was like a big console thing, so there wasn't a lot of crossover until I already had that interest. As I think I was like 17, 18 when I
Mhm.
started playing Castlevania, and then I
Yeah.
went back and I've filled in as many as are convenient. So I've but out of order. So it's I
Yeah.
have kind of a weird because I really liked I really liked the first couple that I played, but there was not much story, which was kind of irritating. I liked the setting.
Oh,
The
yeah.
gameplay I had a love-hate relationship with because it was addicting, but also very frustrating. Like the Castlevania games are hard.
They are
Um,
hard.
so,
I
and I
probably
didn't
don't
always
even
feel like I was
know.
being rewarded. Like,
Yeah, yeah. I don't even know. Honestly, like I don't even know that this was one that I finished. I probably because this was what Nintendo, right?
yeah. Konami.
Konami.
Yeah.
So if I think what I ended up doing is I tried multiple times to play a few of the different ones. And then I'm pretty sure either my brother or my brother-in-law had, I like watched them play other parts that I couldn't get through, or that, because when these came, I mean, by the time I was playing these, I was still really young. Like, so, being able to, I mean, there are games now, like, I don't know if you've ever played Alice Madness Returns. That has some fucking hard segments in it. And I get mad because I'm like, I'm old enough. I should be able to play games easy, but no, not so much. But I do remember not be like really struggling and having to have help a lot when I played these. Um,
I'm
and I
actually,
don't
in talks with my tattoo artist to get a Madness Returns tattoo at the moment.
Shut up. Really? That's
Yeah.
weird. I actually was just looking for it the other day because I took because I was just, I was with my partner for 2 days after some stuff was going on. And so I was gonna I took my original Xbox over there to play Hunter, the Redeemer one. This is the second one in in the series, I think. And I was like, man, I was like, you would probably love Alice in Wonderland. I was like, or I call it Alice in Wonderland. It's not what it is. It's Madness Returns. But I was trying to find the game because it's for the 360, and I have all of them. So I was like trying to find it, and I can't find it anywhere. I don't know where my copy is. Anyway, I digress. I love that game though. That's one of my
That game.
favorites.
That everyone that knows me really hates that game. Because I get really, because now I do achievement hunting instead of doing multiplayer games. So all of my friends get mad at me because they're like, "Do you want to do this thing?" And it's like, "No, I'm achievement hunting." And it's because of Madness Returns, because I got the platinum, and then I was like, I like how this feels. Single player for life. And then
Oh
it was
my
like,
god.
and that's always so I kind of use it as a scapegoat now. But man, that game is so good. And the first one, American McGee's Alice, is I think what got me. It wasn't what got me into gaming. Quake probably got me into gaming, but it was like right up there in things that made me like, oh, games can have stories, and I like them. And
I never played, so I didn't play the first one at all until after I had beaten the second one. So the one that I had, and I don't know how many of them were like this, or I can't remember. Like, I think all I had to do was beat the game, and then the just one time through, whatever.
Mhm.
And the one of the achievement things that you unlock is you could get a free download of the original.
Yeah,
Don't do that on a console. Just
it
don't do it.
is janky to play
It
on
is
console.
so fucking complicated and messed up, and janky is perfect. That's the perfect word. Just don't do it. It's awful.
American McGee's Alice was like for a long time it was my top favorite game of all time, and I knew all the secrets. I was really really good at it on PC. I got Madness Returns for the PlayStation, and
Mhm.
then to get the platinum you had to beat it on the console, and that was the bane of my existence, was trying to relearn the controller controls,
Oh,
because I was like,
yeah.
this is going to be easy. I'm going to sit down, it's going to be like a 3-hour speed run. I'm good to go. Like, I have this achievement locked and loaded, and I like boot it in, and it's like I can't move. Like, what is going on? Why is the jump button the way that it is? Like, it's bad. It's I think one of the most awkwardly ported games from PC to console ever. And then like when I was because that was right before I started doing my like Diablo 3
Mhm.
speedruns and stuff, and when they ported that over to the PlayStation, I was like, "No, thank you." And everyone's like, "It's really good." And I was like, "Never again."
I'm scarred from trying to play the other one. I feel like I don't know. I really there's only one level in the Alice game that I can't play, or and it's really just the one part. It's the underwater one
Mhm.
where you have to I have to think about.
You have to raise the water levels.
So it's the part where you have to follow the lit up seahorse and you have to jump.
Oh. Oh.
So if anybody is new here, Angel is irrationally afraid of sharks. I
Oh,
cannot
no.
play video games with sharks in them. I can't. I can't. I just can't. And so that part, ugh, like I feel my heart beating faster as I'm even talking about it, where you have to, because the mechanical sharks come up and eat you if you're in the dark. Fuck all of that. That was so awful. It took me so long to do it because I kept having to take breaks. It was awful.
Yeah, that level, that was one of, Oh, that was one of the most frustrating things
Yeah,
in the,
and you have to go in the dark to get any secrets. So I
yeah.
didn't get any secrets for that part. I was like, "Don't care. I live in the know. Ignorance is bliss. Let's keep it moving. We gotta follow this seahorse." Oh my god, that level was that I loved the underwater level until then. I loved the levels in general. I love her dresses. So
Oh,
cool.
man.
But the
Yeah.
steampunk one is probably my favorite, but I also really loved her underwater one too. It was really cute. But yeah, anyway, we're not talking about Wonderland.
No, we're not.
But I love that game. So I don't
That's what
even
I
know
was
where
doing as a kid, and instead of playing platformers, I still, to this day, as an adult, get irrationally angry playing platformers sometimes.
it's hard not to rage though, man. It's like, yeah. Like, do you ever play Turok on Nintendo 64?
Mm-mm.
It's a dinosaur game, sort of. It's a first person you play, you go through the world. But it had a lot of it. It had so much of it. Like you'd be like up in the I don't even know, like up in the air on like a cliff and you'd have to jump on all these rocks, but they're like straight it was so stressful. And then there was like a special route, like special things you could go into these like portals or whatever. And it was like special things. So like basically you just like go in this extra room and collect coins or whatever. And it would have like fucking 50 things you had to I hate those. I'm like, oh God, I hate them. Anyway, sorry, I digress. Castlevania. So
Cas uh, yeah, to tie that back around, I will say that's the thing when people say when I say that I get frustrated before I get scared,
mhm.
Castlevania is a really good example of that because it's not like a horror setting so much as like a dark fantasy setting. So
Sure.
the horror level is already light, and then I will get really frustrated just playing a platformer. And this isn't like I was a kid who wasn't good at video games yet and I struggled or whatever. I played this for the first time as an adult or like as a
Okay.
late teen in on my way to adulthood. It's still like that's just a part of my personality where like I'll get frustrated. Castlevania, I think out of to get to just where I was headed with that anyway, Castlevania
Yeah,
is like probably out of the things we'll be talking about it's the gaming franchise that I have the least experience with.
same.
Just because there are like what 30 games or whatever counting the
It's
Japanese ones
a
and
big
it's
world, yeah.
yeah, it's there's a lot, and they're not
Mhm.
even though I like the aesthetic of them, they're not
Yeah,
my kind of game, like, so
same.
it's
Yeah.
you know,
I
I visited
yeah.
them, I appreciate them, they're not for me.
I would be interested to read the comics because I haven't, but I will say that, I think I definitely came into this conversation more, just thinking about how much I really loved the series because I really did. I thought the series was very, 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 very well done, and it was, it was I love the way it's drawn. It was captivating, the story and the add-on stuff, like, that we got with because I think like one of the things that I know I think I'm remembering this correctly, or I feel like this was the case, is Carmilla's character isn't a bad guy in the game because I think she's just a she's just a oh fuck. Like I mean, she's on Dracula's side. She doesn't turn her back on him. Like that's not something that happened. So when we get to like season 3 and 4, when they expand, like I never felt lost in that. I thought all of that was like really, I don't know, like it felt like two separate halves of the story. We've got the start of it, the first and second season with the Dracula stuff, and then we had like the continuation with all these other things. But I really just love the show, and I same as like what you said, like I have respect for Castlevania, what it's done, how big it is, and all of the ways you can kind of ingest it. But I really just came into this with a lot of love for the show because I absolutely love it.
My opinion on the show, I know that people watch things that I'm in for my hot takes, and I don't have a hot take about this. But I have a take that people aren't going to like because it's nuanced, and people don't like to listen to nuanced takes on things. They like to like take the most inflammatory part and run with it. Um,
You're
I
making me nervous.
I I think, and I say this in the abstract a lot about like horror franchises where something can be like really perfectly well done, like really, really fantastic, and also be overrated. Castlevania is that to me. I watched it really early when it dropped because I was interested. I at first like the pilot hit and I was like, "Yay, hype." And then the weeks after the first season dropped, hype started coming in and I was like, "Too much hype." like but I like it is the thing. And I think this is going to be an interesting conversation because you're saying that you watched the first 2 or 3 seasons consecutively.
Mhm.
A lot of my issue with this was getting through season 1 and feeling like they had not given me enough, like, to hope for season 2. And
Mm.
then because the things that Castlevania does well, I liked it more on the rewatch when I was able to sit down and watch it like a full story. But
Right,
this was one
yeah.
that I would get really aggravated with because like during that break, people were like, Castlevania season 2, and I was like, I don't really feel like I got a season 1 yet, like where I'm mad a little bit. Like it
Yeah.
did some things really well, but I remember just like that pure frustration. And then like season 2 came along and I liked it better than season 1 and I was like,
Yep.
"Okay, I feel fulfilled. I feel like they did it."
Mhm.
I kind of doubted them, but they came through and then everyone was like, "Season 3." And I was like, "I'm okay though." Like let's just can we cuz I uh, so going back and watching it through a second time, I it's hard not to still feel because I lived through that this does get maybe a little bit too much hype, but
Mhm.
I enjoyed it more on the rewatch. Like I and it the things that it does well, unparalleled. Like they're
Yeah.
so good. But I do have some what I feel are valid criticisms also of the series.
Yeah.
And one was the one my biggest one is pacing. Like, and a lot of my specific issues come down to pacing,
Mhm.
either while I was watching the show for the first time and had to wait for because there are only 4 episodes in season 1, and they don't tell a full story. They barely
Right.
set up the characters. Like, a
Yeah.
lot of like, when we think of Castlevania characters and how good they are, a lot of that's done in later seasons. Um
Yes. Yeah.
the arc, like the big season 1 arc that we should have had, we actually got in season 2. So
Yep.
it feels like I so there was a lot of frustration for me watching it through the first time. That even though I didn't have it the second time, it's like I think what the show could have done better is realize that it was a show, you know? And this was supposed to be a movie. Like this was pitched as a film, and I think when you look at it like that, and then they were asked to turn it into a series,
Mhm.
you can tell that. Like you can watch the show and be like, I feel like this should have been a movie or a mini series, or because the
Mhm.
pacing is so clunky, and
Mhm.
it's even though it's better on a rewatch because I don't have to wait several months, or in
Right.
one case, one of the breaks was like almost 2 years,
Yeah. There's a
wasn't it?
big one.
Like, there was one that was really annoyingly long. Even
Yep.
though I don't have to wait and I don't have that frustration, it still doesn't feel paced well. Like, it's still
Yeah, no,
clunky.
I don't disagree with that at all. I think that I benefited from being able to watch the first 2 together because I wasn't in a circle of hype, so, like, I didn't hear a lot about it. I'm trying to think of who even told I think one of my best friends was like, "Oh, like, you'd probably love this because 'cause I'm very picky about animated stuff that I will watch that is meant for adults. It has to look a certain way. It has to have like if they zoom in on boobs bouncing around every 30 seconds, I'm not going to watch it. Like it has to be a very like specific thing. And so anyway, so he had said, "Oh, I think you'll really like this." And so by that point though, there was already the 2 seasons.
Yeah.
And at the time, I didn't think or know or whatever that there was going to be a third. And then the third came out shortly after that. And I was like, oh, I really like this. Let me see what else they do with it. But it comes from a different place because I did get to see 1 and 2. But I think as far as like pacing and consistency with the flow of the story and the characters and stuff, they didn't really get that down until 3 going into 4. I feel like
Yeah.
that was when, and I don't know if it's just because maybe because they pitched it as a movie, because maybe they didn't know they were going to get more seasons, who the hell knows, but it definitely felt like they did 1 and 2 like maybe like they didn't know. And
Yeah.
then 3 and 4 felt more like a sure thing where, as
Yes.
far as the way that the story moves and then everything just felt like it made more sense. So I don't disagree with that at all. I think 4 was my favorite season of the entire show. I think, which I know may be weird because it's like not really that related to Dracula by that point. I mean, I guess it is, but you know what I mean. But 4 was my favorite. Like 4 had a lot more of the like stuff I was looking for. Like we got, well, this kind of started in 3, but I feel like it got more in 4. I really loved the stuff with Isaac and the monsters, and I really loved, like this whole like okay, so we have like there's so many different fucking takes on vampires across, there's so many, right? And we've had
Yeah.
a couple that have come along and been like world domination, right? But the way that this setup felt in the later 2 seasons with Carmela and her posse, I felt like that felt like it was a little bit more like a reachable goal. I don't know. Like she felt, to me, she felt like that whole situation with what their plan was, that felt more like an actual possibility. Like if vampires were real, I don't know that they're not, I guess, but if they were real, if we knew about them, that would be something that I think they could do and it would work. And I think that it just made all of that stuff like so much more interesting to me because it was like more military, not just primal. There was like some thought and there was, I don't know, I just really liked that part of it. And I loved like I said, the more of the monster stuff, because that was like some of my favorite stuff from before. And I love Trevor so much. Like I have like it comes up on my memories every year from actually I think it just came up not that long ago over the summer where it says like I posted this on Facebook when I watched one of the seasons because it's been a few years ago now, but it says like I want to be Trevor Belmont when I grow up. Like I think he's like I love him so much, but I didn't, like you were saying, I didn't really get super connected to the characters until the later 2 seasons because there's just a lot of bumps to kind of
Yeah.
get through. But I felt like by the time I got to 3 and then the way that it ended with 4, I felt like it was worth the growing pains. Like I didn't feel bitter about the journey. I felt like, the beginning was a little rough, but I think it more than made up for it. And then I ended up being just wildly in love with it.
I think part of the issue for me, and again, it's hard to. I don't blame anyone except maybe Netflix for this because,
Just blame
like,
them for everything. I'm good with that.
well, because as a writer, you do the best that you can with what you know you have. So it's like I fully
Sure.
believe they did their best those first 2 seasons with
Mhm.
the 12 episodes, I think. I think it's 4 and then 8.
That sounds
Or is
right.
it
Yeah.
4 and then 6? 10 or 12 episodes that they had, and it's
Yeah.
like they made the most of telling that full arc, the arc that they wanted to tell. But it feels like the pacing just feels so rushed, and I have kind of a tough time because it's like I feel like that's the better s I it's the better story, but it's worse told, but I wish it had been better told because that was what I was there to see. I wanted the big
That's fair.
war council. I wanted to see Dracula. I wanted more of his reasons for being an antagonist and more of how he handles that before we found out that he, got soft at the end and, before Carmilla took over. And it's not even that I have an issue with all of the stuff that they did after, because
Mhm.
I think they did some of my favorite plot points. Um, I think I liked season 3 a little bit more than I liked season 4.
Mhm.
Uh, Season 3 is my favorite season, but I do like the way that they continued the story, because I do
Yeah.
like the starting out of, Isaac's story. Hector ended up being my favorite character, I think pretty much in the entire run. I thought he was really interesting. They did some cool stuff with him in the 3rd season.
Mhm.
I think they did the best that they could from, like, a really shaky foundation, but
Yeah.
they just as a team were so rushed that season that it's like, because I feel Trevor as a character on paper is just so good, even in those first 4 episodes, that you want to like him, but you just don't. He's such everyone just feels like I don't know, kind of like a token character where it's like, here's our, here's
Yeah.
this archetype that we have in here, and then, you have Alucard, and he's like, here's our whiny immortal man. It's like, because that was a big trope at the time, and
Mhm.
here's our one woman who
They're
can be
they're like
brash with
cookie cutter.
everyone.
Yeah.
Like it does it and those are the kind of shows these are always the shows that bother me the most,
Mhm.
where there's so much potential, where they're so close to being perfect, and the studio got in the way. Like,
Mm.
and that's because it's like it's one thing to be like, they did a good job with what they had, because I believe
Yeah.
that. But
Same.
it could have been a perfect show if they'd been given more, and I get so frustrated.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. No, I see what you mean. Yeah, I think by the time, you get past the Dracula arc and you get more into the other stuff, I think it's like it just became like I wish there was like another word. It became more I want to say fun, but that's not really what I mean. It just became more like was more I don't know, actiony. I'm not sure what the word is, but it just became more entertaining for me because it was like, there was a lot of the stuff. There's so many, like everybody's separate now. We've got like these like three or four different things going on. We've got Sypha and Trevor. We've got Isaac's out doing weird things in the desert, and then we've got the stuff with Hector and which ties into Carmilla and them, but is also like a separate thing. And I don't know. It's like there was a lot of different branching off, and so it was just neat for me. Like I really like seeing like all the different stuff and then reconnecting them, which I didn't think was done maybe like the best, but I didn't think it was done so horribly that it didn't make sense either. Um, I think that, Hector and Isaac's relationship and like, I don't know, like there was some things that they touched on and then kind of like got away from and never really went back to. But I thought that 3 and 4, I think they were just more entertaining because I think I went in maybe with like, hate to say it this way because I do genuinely love the show, but I think I went in with a lowered expectation of like storytelling. So I
yeah.
just went in and I was like, oh, monsters. Like, I don't know. Like that's kind of like what happened.
It is kind of weird because I didn't realize while I was watching it, like as it was coming out, how drastic the shift was in between like 1 and 2 and then 3 and 4. I
Mhm.
remember 3 and 4 felt slower while I was watching them, which makes sense because there are like 10 more episodes between those two. Like it's literally the longer half of the show.
It is.
So,
Yeah.
but it was amazing. It was astounding to see there's like a break in between those like halfway point. They're like, "Okay, now from here on, the writing is gonna be better." And I was like, "Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Well, I like this."
Yeah.
It's, we and it's sad. I do really feel like the first season is all exposition. It's like, "Here's
Yeah.
this dude. This is his story. Here's Dracula. Here's why he's mad." And it's like, there was a lot of telling me things, which sucks because the visual storytelling in the show is so phenomenal when they choose to use it. It was so
Yeah.
underutilized those first couple seasons and that but
Yeah.
it's gorgeous. This is one of the most gorgeous animated shows ever, ever, ever.
It is really, really good. I agree. Yeah, I mean, I think some of the other weaknesses for me, Dracula being weak was like weird. Like I felt like he he's supposed to be the big bad, right? And then it's like I love that I'm all for like humanizing monsters. Like I love that. I think that's great. I love when they do that. And I'm here for it. Not this monster though, because this monster is like a for real monster. And I feel like I can get behind the romance and the loving of his wife and all this shit, but the dynamic that they had and how that translated into the way he behaved bothered me. And then
Yeah.
I remember being like irritated because again, I genuinely by the end of this, I loved it. I was super happy with the ending, except the scene towards the end where we see them together in like hell or whatever it is. And I was like, well, for what reason? Like it made me mad because I was like, you motherfucker. Like I knew because I knew like we were done. Why would you show us that? I don't, why? Because then now I feel like I had to pretend that that didn't happen.
Yeah.
I hated that. That was the one thing about the way they wrapped things up towards the end that I really just didn't like. I was like, because that part of the story was supposed to be completely finished.
Yeah.
And there's those tales of piece or trails, not tales, trails of pieces where it's like, oh, like we got to make sure he doesn't come back, and we have to. But then it ended up being a footnote for the other big story, which is all the other shit that happens. So I just didn't feel like that made sense, and it made me angry.
I sometimes forgot what this was an adaptation of because it's which is terrible to say because there are so many Dracula adaptations, and usually
Oh,
it's hard for me to separate, like, when I come into other vampire stuff, it's hard for me to be like, okay, we're doing like mythology Dracula and not like Bram Stoker's Dracula. And
sure.
usually I'm pretty good at separating the two.
Yeah.
For whatever reason, I think it's the visuals. I think it is the visual storytelling in here.
Mm,
There's another adaptation of Dracula that I got really into that has like a very similar setting, I
mhm.
guess, to this. And I kept being like, but that's a Dracula that is pure evil. No redemption, full on. And that was one thing, like when they kept humanizing Dracula, I was like, they didn't do this. And then it's like, this is Castlevania. This is not like
Yeah, 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 yeah.
that
Yeah.
other thing. But it was really hard for me because I'd forget, they have like all this really gory, vivid storytelling and stuff. And I was just like, this is the kind of gritty, no remorse Dracula that I want. And then we'd get to Dracula himself and he'd be like, I miss my wife. And I'd be like,
It's a little mopey.
buddy.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
but it was like, and it's hard to, just with the story that they had, I know I keep harping like on season 2, but it's like
Mhm.
I'm trying to be generous to it because it's like I think the idea of Alucard having to kill his father as his father is realizing, the horrors of his actions, that's objectively good storytelling, but
Sure.
it was so hard because we didn't have those deep feelings for Alucard at the
You're
time
right.
that we had
You're
by the
right.
end of the series. So it
Yeah.
was like, if I'm not going to have that emotional response, I would almost rather just Dracula not feel bad about it, you know?
Yeah, yeah. No,
Like,
I know what you mean. I think a lot of people now what I do remember seeing, especially as season 4 came out, I remember seeing a lot of people who were like, ooh la la Alucard, right? Which, fine. But I was like not on that train. I was like, I don't
people like
really
broody
feel,
vampires.
huh?
People like really broody vampires.
Yeah. Well, I think that for me, I think he was just like I just thought that a lot of the stuff with him was useless. Like, I felt like a lot of it was filler. Like that whole thing with like having sex with the siblings and then they try to kill him or whatever. I was like, I don't all right. Like, I guess it was like I know it's like a moment when he like uses an ability, or I know there's like a significance to it, sort of, but like a
Kind of.
lot of his stuff, like that one silly ass scene where he's sitting at the table and he's talking to like the doll versions of.
After a month. That's the thing, because you watch it and you're like, okay, so because I didn't know what to expect in season 3. Like there had been
No, right.
I wasn't even sure they'd come back. It opens up with him talking to these dolls, and I'm like, oh my god, like have they killed those two? How long has it been? He lives forever. What if we're in a
Hundreds
whole
of
new
years
world?
later.
He misses them. He's been alone defending this keep they left him for centuries. 1 month. A single month card. Take a fucking nap, get over yourself.
I know, it's too much. And it was funny, like, I definitely giggled, but it was more just like, "What is going on right now?" Like, a lot of his and I love the scenes, like, the scenes where he fights and he brings, like, a purpose to him being on camera, I guess we'll say drawing, whatever. I like, a lot of his stuff just felt filler, which was obnoxious because of who he was supposed to be.
Yeah.
It was just like, well, he should be more. He should be bigger. He should, I don't know, something. But a lot of his stories just felt, or a lot of pieces or whatever you want to call them, like it just, to me, like, they just felt like extra stuff because they knew people liked the character, so they kept him around.
Yeah, he didn't feel I they wrote him into a really interesting point where
Mhm,
at the end of season 2 where it's like this is a good place for his character to
mhm.
sit and reflect for a while, and then he couldn't do it for a month, and they came back and were like, "Have some fun Alucard moments," which, in a way, weirdly does capture, like, the thing about Alucard, Sypha says it in, I think, season 2, where
Mhm.
she realizes that he probably is just a teenager in a man's body by the way that he ages, and I think that's the thing, people can be like, "Ooh, dreamy, broody vampire," but he was not a mature character.
No.
Like, he
That's
doesn't
true.
have that depth.
And then, like, too, and I know, like, there's supposed to be, this again, humanizing this monster, right? Because they're like, "Oh, like, he's just been through all this shit, and he just lets these 2 people into his life, the siblings, the ones that try to kill him." And I'm like, like, even from the beginning, like, when they first meet him, I was like, I feel like you need to have trust issues. Like, why do you not have trust issues? Why are you trusting people and letting them in and letting your guard down after everything by that point that had happened? I was so confused by that. I was like, I feel like he went from being the like isolated, broody, like it's just me on my own kind of thing, to like, I don't know, like a wounded puppy. I don't know. Like he was just like, I need friends and I need 2 of them like I used to have, and there's 2 of you. And so I can't sleep with the other 2. So maybe I'll sleep with you. Oh, you're trying to kill me. That's not going to work. Like, I feel like that whole thing was very strange.
That dynamic was really weird.
Yeah. Yeah. So I did like the look of the monsters, and I love the gore in this. Love, love, love it. It was so well done.
So
Um,
it's a weird word to use for gore, but it's so beautiful,
it
like, the
is
way
the
that it's rendered.
colors. I no, I totally agree. The colors, the use of the not set pieces because it's drawn, scenes, like the scenery and like the use of those types of things, incorporation to the gore and the violence and the fighting and the monsters is like all super well done, very well thought out and put together. Like, I thought all of that looked really, really good. And all of the stuff with the monsters, I was there for. I love monster stuff in general, and they were some of my favorite scenes were um fight scenes with them, because I thought they were just really. And I said at the end of 2, I was like, man, I'd really like more of that. Like, I'd really like more of this other stuff. And then we did finally get quite a bit more in 3, and then leading us into 4.
So the fight scenes, I came at from a very different angle because it
Mhm.
was uh, I used to watch a lot of anime, and I got kind of burnt out because I was at the time, I was doing, like, convention circuits, so I was
Mhm.
at a lot of I was just surrounded by anime 24/7, and it was too
Yeah.
much. And I was like, if I and when I took a break from watching anime altogether, for a little while, I was like, "If I never had to see another fight scene in my life, I'd be happy." But then, like, Castlevania hit me in this like, the first couple seasons were really interesting because it was like, even though it is the very stereotypical, in some ways, anime fight scene where they're very long, they're very drawn out, we see a lot of the same angles, we
Mhm.
see like the same kind of archetypes, I'd
Mhm.
argue, that we see in anime, like featured here in Castlevania also. They were visually very interesting because they really utilized the vampire powers specifically, and I think this is probably one reason why Alucard was as big a deal as he was, where, like, the telekinetic sword fighting was very interesting to see on screen.
It was
The
cool.
bat transformations are always, like,
Yes.
so well done.
Yeah.
It's
You're right.
so they did kind of pull me back in. I was getting I 3 held me, 3 I thought was a good balance. By the time I got around to the end of 4, it was like, if I never had to see another fight scene, I'd be okay. But I was already I think the fact that I could come from a place of, like, fighting burnout and
Mm.
still get as invested as
Yeah.
I was for, like, 3 seasons in the mechanics of how these characters are fighting is, like, really it's a testament to the show, like, how inventive they got with some of these scenes.
Yeah, and I don't because I am so insanely picky
Mhm.
about anime and animated type things like this, I haven't seen that many. I most of the time I turn them off. I can't get like I think in my lifetime of watching anime and animated series, I've probably finished maybe like 5
That
because I hate most of them. Like
that's the other thing is that they go on forever. Is that, like,
well,
even if you like
I'm
anime, they'll
so
go on.
like I don't like the silly ones. I want if I'm gonna watch it, it's gotta be like dark and it's gotta have some like grit to it. So like a couple of my favorites, right? So Cowboy Bebop, I know is a really cliche answer, but it's really fun. I really like that one. Full Metal Alchemist is my favorite. And if you're a fan of anime and you're watching this going, you just haven't watched enough anime, I can say
No.
fuck you to that
Uh-uh.
one because I
I
love Full
as
Metal.
someone that has watched a bunch of anime, Full Metal Alchemist is also my favorite, so
It's Full Metal Alchemist is my favorite. It's I had somebody tell me that once. They're like, "Oh, you only feel that way because you haven't watched enough of it." And I was like, "I could just like things because I like them, you know." But anyway, I finished what's another one I finished? Oh, Helsing.
I'll say.
Helsing was really good. I don't know if you ever saw this one. Most people, when this subject comes up, have no idea what I'm talking about. There's another one called I pronounce it this way. I'm pretty sure this is close. Say Cryad. It was like SA. Cry was in big letters, and then ED was
Yeah.
in smaller letters, and it was the people that had the altars as a part of
Uh,
their bodies. That one was a really cool action one. I finished what they gave me of that one. Castlevania. Like it's a very short list because I get fed up with it very quickly. I watched Inuyasha for 700 years until I realized what a disaster of a show that was, and I stopped watching it. I know there's a couple of others I know that I've seen, but I'm super picky, so I don't watch a lot of it because it gets on my nerves. Oh, Black Butler. Did you ever watch that one?
yeah, that was one I never got into. I watched it 'cause at the time
Yeah.
it almost felt because that was when I was doing my anime conventions. It was one of those, like, if I don't watch it, I'll be out of the loop, but I watched a lot of it like, "What am I watching?"
Yeah, I the first season I loved. The second season got weird. Like the second season starts with like that little boy getting naked out of bed with like a grown ass man, and I was like, "What is this the same show?" It's weird, but I did really like the first season. I know there's others, but I'm just so picky. I don't have a lot of exposure, so when I can commit to something, like it's because it just happens to check like a lot of boxes for me because I seriously like I start them and then I cut them off because I can't get through them. I tried to watch what's another really like some of the funny ones. I hate so much. Oh, I love that Avatar and the Korra one. Both of those were good as far as animated. But anyway, but yeah, I digress. Like Castlevania hit a lot of boxes for me because I love the way it's drawn. It's not silly. It's not, hyper sexualizing 12-year-old girls. So, it just checked a lot of boxes for me. I really liked it.
It did have one of my big anime peeves, which
Okay,
is weird
what's that
because
one?
I don't usually even though I did talk about, like, fight burnout that I was experiencing coming into the show, I don't
Yeah.
usually categorize this with anime for the most
Okay.
part. It's like a separate subsection in my head,
Okay.
I guess. Um, Probably because I didn't watch it in Japanese. That's probably a big part of the differentiation for me.
Yeah.
Um one thing that it like, one of my big anime pet peeves that I did see present a little bit in Castlevania is I have a tough time and this isn't just anime, I guess I have it in a lot of other things. I was just recently complaining about it in a fantasy series that I was reading too.
Okay.
The scales of things need to make sense to me. Like, I don't
Like
need to
the
know how the
sizes.
magic. No, like the actual, like, power balance in the
Oh,
world,
oh, 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 oh. Okay. I
like
gotcha. Okay.
that's something that really irritates me, and it's a pet peeve that I have across a lot of different things, but in anime, I feel like we see it a lot because it's a medium where there are very often, like, magic powers in fights,
Sure.
uh, And
Yeah, I
they with,
follow.
like,
Yeah.
Dragon Ball Z being a big one where they have, like, Super Saiyan, and that's
Can't do
the
that
thing to
one. I
be.
can't do it.
And then it went on for, like, 16 more years, and they had to keep finding new and newer and newer, and
Yeah.
by the time you get to the end of that show, not that I did, but by the time someone, hypothetically, makes it to the end of that show, uh, the scale, the power, the amount of power that a single person has to come in and be the new bad guy that no one can defeat is so life altering that it breaks the suspension of disbelief. And that was something I really only experienced it like a couple times in Castlevania. For the most part, I think they do a good job where it's like, here are the years and years of work that we have to do for forging and for alchemy, and here's how vampires know all the sciences that they know. Sypha, though, when she starts using magic, and
I
I'm
had
like,
a
"You
feeling
had
that's where
a
this was
tribe.
going. I had a feeling. I was like, "Oh, no.
You
Okay."
had a whole group of people that taught her this magic, and she's just summoning willy-nilly whatever kind of fire and ice things she wants. Keep her around. That's your army right there, is these, like, 6 seekers." Like, what the fuck? Like, that one just kind of, and then I had a tough time, and I felt so stupid because by the time you get to, like, season 3 and you've had the month-long break, it's like, you at that point just kind of have to accept that Sypha breaks the system, but, still, when I saw her casting for the first time in season 3, it's like, there's no fucking way. Like,
Yeah.
she's
Makes sense.
not just this gifted with no fucking reason. Like,
That's kinda common in general though, isn't it? Like the
yeah.
when we it's like a common thing with heroes, whether they're magic wielding or not, like, they just have, like they're just I don't know, sometimes, like, they're just really strong for no reason, or they're really fast, or they have this crazy agility for no fucking reason, you
So
know?
I told you I was complaining about this recently in a fantasy series I was reading.
Mhm.
She forgot, the main character forgot she had super strength for like an entire book. And I thought, because one of the plots of the book was that she was sick. So I was like, okay, so she's sick.
Oh.
She doesn't have access to her super strength. And even though she's at her weak, she's her most sick. There's a scene where she gets into trouble and then she's like, oh yeah, I have super strength. And I was like, I will kill you. Like, you have world breaking super strength that you just forgot about but have had access to for the last year. Are you kidding me? Like, and there was actually a scene. I remember the scene that broke me because she is stuck and literally says, "Oh yeah," followed by her punching her way out of the like prison. And I was like, I can't read this anymore. I have to be done. Like,
Yikes. Oh, that's a yeah.
but like, and I know it's one of those things that you're just supposed to get past, but I have a tough time getting past it sometimes. And Sypha was one because I didn't like her that much in the first couple seasons. I thought she was kind of irritating.
Mhm.
Season 3, she starts to develop more of a personality. The
Yep.
banter gets better. I
Yep.
like her relationship to Trevor.
Yep.
It's getting better. I like her as a character. And then every now and then I'd be reminded that I'm still kind of irritated that we don't know how her magic works better. Like,
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I actually wasn't a super big fan of her in the beginning either. She kind of comes across like a know-it-all, like she's overly confident, but like not in like a cool, like badass female way, just in like an annoying way.
just some kind of, and she can't say thank you. And then, which is fine because these are some of the most antisocial characters, but she's like nomadic. She has a history dealing with people and speaking to people. And then Trevor comes along and saves her life. And not only will she not say thank you, she then berates him for having bad social skills. And it's like, Sypha, please
That's true. I hadn't
take
even
a
really thought
moment.
about that.
Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
but she gets better is the thing, is that like, and I do feel like, which is maybe why I like season 3 the best, is because I do feel like characters really started hitting their strides right around, except for Alucard. Everyone else started hitting their strides right around season 3.
Except the blonde bisexual vampire. I
Yeah.
think that like I think like some of the I will say like some of the more like relationship driven things I wasn't as invested in. I like what's the vampire's name that sleeps with Hector? What's her name?
Lenore.
Lenore. I I wanted so badly to like her. on some level, and I think I did in the beginning because I was like, "Oh, she's, like, a little different," and then it's like she ended up being, like, such a pain in the ass. But, like, a lot of that stuff, like, I didn't really care. I wasn't as invested in that stuff as I was the, like, bigger picture stuff. I think the only relationship that I got invested in that I liked was Trevor and Sci-Fi. I thought they were cute. But yeah, I agree. I think the characters and everything in general just started to get better as we went into the later 2 seasons, specifically 3, because 3 was the kind of the turning point of all of it, from the change of how they were in 1 and 2, and then they get better. But yeah, I agree. I think that's definitely true.
Lenore was one of my, I think by association, probably, uh,
Hmm.
but also because she was introduced. She's, I think technically she appears at the end of season 2, but we get to meet her properly in
Yeah.
season 3, where the
Hmm.
writing had already kind of stabilized.
Hmm.
I feel like Lenore was one of my favorites, but I did get really frustrated with her arc in the middle because they introduce her as this really interesting person, in
Hmm.
comparison to her sisters, and then they
Yeah.
kind of walk it back where she's like, "Look, she's also dangerous and has an edge." And I was like, "I
Mhm.
like this." And then she went a little bit too far, and then it's like, "Well, now she's just discount Carmilla." Like, I don't know why we need a second one of her. And she ended in a different place. Like, I liked where their arc ended up. Hector and Lenore, I think, had my favorite romance just because it it this is, I didn't like the finale of Castlevania. We already talked about the ending scene
Yes.
with and how dumb that was. I also did not like the Sypha and Trevor, like, they have, like, this whole happy in his memory wrap up, and then he's fine, and then they do goofs about it for, like, 3 or 4 minutes, and I was like, "That's it's too happy,
Oh, I
it's too
forgot
much."
about that. I
I
did
don't
hate that
like it.
too. You're right. Oh my god, I totally forgot. I think I purposefully forgot that. I
So then, like
forgot about that.
so then, like, to have Lenore and Hector, like, Lenore's just like, "I'm gonna suicide real quick," and Hector's like, "I respect your decision," and to have that conclude like a romance arc in the same episode as everything else was, like, so sickeningly sweet, it was
Yeah,
like, in a weird way, I kind of was like, "Yeah,"
I can
right?
see
Like,
that.
it's kinda refreshing, though.
He's married in the game, Hector.
Hector?
Yeah. It's
Is he?
like part of the one of the stories has to do with like him turning his back on Dracula because he's going to go run away with the woman he wants to be with or something like that.
Oh.
It's completely different. But I mean, that wouldn't have worked in this anyway on pretty much any level. So it needed to be the way that it was. But yeah, I liked them off and on. But I got to that point where I was like, okay, but like we've already seen this character in
We already
somebody
have
else, and I
her.
just didn't like some of that middle stuff. I wanted to at first, like I was invested, and then I was like, oh, I don't like where this is going. But it did have a
They
nice
lost
wrap up. I
me
agree with that.
in the middle, but yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
I still think they were my favorite couple, if only for I really respect that they ended in just, like, a dark tone, because that's what I want from Castlevania at the
true.
end of the day. Like, the last episode, other than those 2,
Hmm.
was just so sweet across the board. Like, even I don't think we get to I could be wrong. I just watched it today, you would think I would know, but I watched, like, 3 or 4 episodes, and it's like we talked about, I don't remember which one was
Just
in which
all of it
thing.
together.
I don't think we get to see Isaac in the finale. I think his wrap up is in the episode before that.
I think
But
that's right.
even when they talk about him, like, they mention how weird it is and how happy he's been and uplifting and stuff, and it's like I feel like they're just trying to tie it up a little bit too neatly in the finale.
Yeah,
Um,
and then to throw the Dracula thing at the end was like, I don't what that was so I'm telling you, like that part made me so mad. I was like, for what reason? Like, why what like we got like our individual things or whatever, fine. Our overall story, fine. But then like to add something like to go back, I'm like, that really irritated me. Yeah, I think Isaac's wrap up is in the previous episode.
I think
I think
so.
you're right. I don't think he's in the finale. I Yeah, I liked this one. I one of my favorite fight scenes is when Trevor fights oh man, I can see it so clearly in my head. He's on a cliff, it's a big giant thing in front of him. Who is that supposed to be?
Death? Are you talking about the death fight?
I'm sure it's a cat, but the sound from earlier and stuff has me on like high alert.
Oh, that's fair.
You heard it too, huh? Well, go look. He looked at me like, the fuck? I am not. I'm pretty sure it's just, I would have gotten an alert on my phone if the door or anything was messed with. I think it's just my other cat. Sorry. Anyway. Yes, the death fight. I was gonna say that and I was like, is that right? But it is. That was one of my favorite. I thought like that looked so cool.
Yeah, that's one of the, like, being animated, they had some really cool opportunities to make things so stylistic, and the death fight, I think, is
Mhm.
one of the prime examples of that, like,
Yeah, it looked good. I loved that scene. That was one of my favorites, I think.
yeah.
Um, but yeah,
I complained a lot about the magic system. I also wanna toss in here, it had the forges. The Forge Masters are one of my all-time favorite
yes,
magic systems
yes,
ever in a show, ever, ever.
yes,
So
so good. Loved it.
so, like, I feel like it's easier to complain about stuff, but, there were elements of Castlevania that I just really loved. I loved the Forge
The
Masters,
Forge
I
Masters
loved
are
how they
awesome.
worked.
Mhm.
I loved the 2 because we really only get to see the 2 of them in the show, and I
Yeah.
love how their approach was so different, and, like, you could even see, like, as they were forging things, the different stylistic choices that were made in how that
Yes.
looks and how that
Yeah.
reflected their approach. Like, there
Yeah.
there were a lot of just, like, really cool touches in this show.
Mhm. Yeah, no, I agree. They were my favorites too. I mean, and of course, like I know I've said this multiple times, but that was because like I really liked the monster pieces, like all of the, and not just the monsters themselves, but their tie-in, the way they were utilized, how they came to be. Like I thought all of that was really, really smart. And it came across just like I don't know, like it was really it fit so well and it just like made sense, I guess. But I really liked them. I'm with you on that one. I totally agree. They were fantastic. That was some of the highs for me were the sequences that had to do with the Forge Masters and the monsters.
Honestly, if I could get if I could get the rights to any, like, subplot of a show, it would be Forge Masters, like, that's such a cool it's such a cool term for it, and they
Yeah,
approached it in such a unique way. I
they did.
man, and that's the thing is because it's easy to, like, sit and poke holes in the magic system, but they did some things that were really phenomenal. Even the
Hmm.
alchemical symbols and stuff that they got
Hmm.
into, the
Hmm.
cults that worshipped the
Yes.
like, they get into the town that worships the, brimstone
Yep.
symbol, but they don't know what it is, and,
Yep.
then they're all excited that it's about hell, and, like, they're just, like there were lore building things in here that were phenomenal that I wish could have been expanded on, like, a
Yeah.
little bit more,
Yeah.
but they were very effective because I still think about them, like
Well, and even though it's been so, I haven't watched Castlevania since the fourth season came out a couple 2 years ago, something like that. And
I
I when I think it's a testament to that because I know like when I think back on it, when I'm remembering pieces, like those are the things I remember first, you
yeah.
know? And some things get forgotten or like I've remembered as we're talking or whatever, but like the things that I remember the most, I feel like that means that those were the things that were probably done the best because they stick out as a positive, as something that you're thinking about. But yeah, no, I agree. The Forge Master stuff was really cool. Loved it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that's the thing is that, like, these are because I just finished my rewatch today. I did the first, couple seasons earlier in the year and then, recently have been finishing my rewatch. So, the complaints I feel like are very fresh in my mind because I've just seen it. It's
Sure.
the cool stuff that lingers, like,
Yeah, no, you're right.
before I started rewatching, the thing I remember, the 2 things I remembered most were the visuals, and I think, for as much shade as I threw at season 1, those opening visuals of the castle and the corpses on the spikes as we're getting the introduction and just the desolate landscape that was,
Mhm.
like, in the background of every shot, like, it was framed so beautifully. The visuals really stick out to me and like the forging really stuck out to me. It really is the good things that I takeaway for the most part.
Yeah,
The
I get
people are
that.
just fresh. Like,
Yeah, no, I get well, and that's like to your point, I had forgotten about the in memory of Trevor thing and then him being I forgot about that because I do remember being irritated about that too. The only negative that I remembered like just fresh was the Dracula thing at the end because I was like, why? For what fucking reason is that there? But I had forgotten about the other thing until you said it, and I was like, oh shit, that's right. I do remember that. That was not good. I hated that too.
also, just throwing this out there, Alucard seems to have like more fond memories of his mother. Like he talks about his mom a lot.
Hmm.
Um, I noticed that in on the rewatch, this was not something I noticed while I was watching the first time. But while I was rewatching, Lisa never talks about him except for in the one flashback he has where they're together. Just which I don't know how I feel about it. It's either like
An
top tier
oversight,
feminism or bad characterization. Like, and I don't know because like she always has other stuff going on in
you're
her
right.
life.
Yeah,
Like,
you're right.
and it's one of those things where it's like when you're getting kidnapped by the church, do you mention your son? Maybe not. I don't know. But then it's like yeah, or like when you're helping the old woman, do you bring up your son then? Do you have him like in the room? I don't really know when she could have possibly brought him up with all the chaos happening in her life that we see, but I do just think
Yeah.
it's really funny that he's like, "Mom always made time for me, and mom was always the one in the house playing games with me." And then like whenever we see Lisa, there's
It's
just no mention she has a kid. Like,
that's true. That's a good point. I wonder if it's just an oversight. I wonder if when they wrote out the sequences or drew whatever, the sequences with her, they were so other plot focused, they didn't think to put in those little
I I think it has to be one of those because I know that they wanted to, and it's little stuff like that where like I kind of wish they'd had time to flesh that out in the first couple seasons because I'm
yeah.
sure it was probably to make it a surprise that Alucard is Dracula's son, like to
I
people
was
that didn't
thinking that
know.
too, but I think there probably would have been a better way to maybe do it.
But yeah, and then once we know, because I think we know at the end of season one or like really early into season two, and there are Lisa flashbacks after that. It feels like it would have been a really good time for her to like express emotion
To
about him.
kind of shape that motherly something. Yeah.
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 And
That's
then, and Dracula has this really emotional moment too, because Alucard's whole thing is like, opposite of my father and like doomed to fight him. And he goes on about it, about how his relationship with Dracula isn't as good, which fair. But then like Dracula's the one that has an emotional, like they wrap up that arc and we
mhm.
just and then even at the end scene, as dumb as it was, where they're talking about, like going and building a new castle in England or whatever,
Yeah.
um, like
Yeah.
the son just isn't mentioned. Like she just like it's not great.
Yeah, it sounds like it's probably just an oversight. They were probably so focused on doing other things with her scenes that they just it probably didn't even register.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but I did that was and honestly, I've said Hector's my favorite character. I said that Hector and Lenore might be my favorite relationship, probably because I like Hector so much. But honestly, Lisa was a cool character. Like
She
I
was
got so excited in the pilot when I thought she was going to be a bigger part of the show, and then obviously not.
not right.
But like
Yeah.
there was that brief moment where I was like, let's learn more about the woman that Dracula's in love with that causes all that stuff. Like, because I
Yeah.
think her characterization, aside from not being the most attentive mother, I think she was really interesting. Like, she was a
Yeah.
good character. I would have loved to see. I, and that's the thing. There are so many things from Castlevania that I would have loved to see more of. I wish they had known from episode one that they were going to get 4 seasons because I think they would have looked different. You know.
Oh, yeah. No, I totally agree. And I think the sequences with her specifically, I think those were I really liked all of them. I liked I think she was super engaging and interesting, like you said. I think it would have been cool to have seen more. And it's hard because first of all, I mean everything on Netflix gets canceled. So I just imagine like they probably that I think that sort of will we, won't we mentality is really obvious in the first couple seasons because of the way it was handled as like the storytelling part. So yeah, I agree with you. I think it would look completely different if they had known, okay, here's this, 4-season deal or whatever. They could have done something very different. And it probably would have all been about Dracula. It probably wouldn't have done that weird split off where it went into like some other shit after the fact.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is, and it's too bad because I wanted to see more Dracula. I also, even though I really liked seeing Carmilla,
Hmm.
I would have loved to see more of her opposing Dracula and butting heads while they're still on the same side. Like, I think that would have
Yeah.
been,
Yeah.
because it was such a cool dynamic, and I just feel like we didn't have enough time with it. But it's the same, like, my all-time favorite show is Dollhouse, and they had the same issue where it's like they were constantly, the studio was like, "Hey, we're gonna cancel you." So they kept like wrapping shit up, and then the studio would be like, "No, just kidding. You have a few more episodes." Like, go at it. And like
Mhm.
it really fucked up the pacing of the show. So it's like I have to believe that's what happened with Castlevania, especially because like you said, it's a Netflix show. And even the ones that do really well really only get about 4 seasons.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. It's never, yeah.
it,
I
there's
think
no way they knew.
officially, if depending on the writer strike situation, Stranger Things will be like the longest running Netflix original there's ever been.
Yeah.
Um, well, so I mean, I think I know the answer to this, but we talk about this every episode. So, how do we feel about this as like a standalone?
I think it's a great standalone.
Yeah,
I think they did enough new stuff. Um,
yeah,
like they definitely pay homage to the games. Um,
sure.
even having not played all of the games, like you can see
Yeah.
where those tie-ins are, and I think they did a fine job with that. But I think it works as a standalone show, especially my best friend, who is the one who he might be part of the reason why I feel like this got overhyped, is because he like live texted me his reactions constantly to
Oh
Castlevania when it came out.
no,
He really loves the show. I don't think he played a single one of the games. Like I think it works as a
as by
standalone.
itself. Yeah, I would agree. I think it's fine. I don't think you have to have there's no gaps that the game is going to fill in this. Like it just going back, and I think this is yeah, no, I think so too. No, I totally agree.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he
Well,
did a good
cool.
job.
Do it. I know we have our list. I don't think we know quite yet what we're talking in October, but we'll reconvene. Do we know?
It depends on I because we're doing FNAF, but we'll probably have to do one standalone episode before that.
Yes.
Willy's Wonderland. We come in, we just do a Willy's Wonderland special and leave.
Yeah, because FNAF comes out in the middle of October, late October. I can't
Late
remember.
October, the
Late October.
27th, I
Yes, we won't
believe.
be able to get it in before the end of the month. So that'll be a November episode.
Okay.
Um, yeah, so yeah,
So
I
you'll
know.
get
We
like a
talked about doing Willy's Wonderland.
single standalone episode that we can squish in before then.
Yeah, we'll do something else before we do FNAF. So FNAF in November, something else in October. But yeah, all right, cool. Well, I think that's all we have for this episode of Video Game Adaptations. If you have not seen the others, there's a playlist. We've covered other ones. The one we did last was Detention, which was a really fun conversation and about a really great adaptation. Yeah, more to come. So thank you guys so much for hanging out with us, and have a good rest of your week. Enjoy your weekend coming up, and Kat and I will see you next
Bye, guys.
month.